Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one, the only Zebec network. Now, listen, overall, I want to show you guys something from a different type of perspective. I do believe Zebec is going to start to reverse sooner than later. Now, I'm not saying this week or even 2 weeks, but generally sooner than later. When we go and look at Zebec, right? If we go to look at previous price action, we can see that, when Zbcn started to bottom out, granted, it did take a long time to officially reverse, but when it started to bottom out, right, it started to create lots and lots of rejections in a certain zone. We could see, I would argue, mainly between the 0.0008 to the 0.00, like you can even go up to the 1, I guess. Right, granted, big range, but this was generally the area where we really started to reverse. Now, if we wanted to be more specific, I probably would argue you could probably go down to here and do something like this. Yeah, this would probably make it more accurate. So if you're dollar cost averaging here in the past, you would be getting really great consistent sniper entries. And I do believe, this same thing is going to start happening with Zebec, but up here. Okay, look, when we go and do something like this, we are taking some of Zebec's highs, from here to here, and we're just going on a solid foundation. All right, we can see previous rejections back in June and July. We tapped here in October. We tapped here in November. We swept this zone back in mid-November, and we can see, in terms of candle closes, we are also, closing a little bit higher than this box. We do have slightly weak price action, so we could be seeing a little bit further of a dip, but generally it looks like overall this zone is going to be a fantastic zone. Now, obviously, you could argue that in theory, this could be the full big range, right? And I would say, definitely this is, when you look at it from a big broad standpoint, of course, this zone is going to be the main zone because, you can afford to have bigger pullbacks. Even if we sweep this area, we'll probably go somewhere into here, touch off this zone too, touch off all these zones. But look, it's a big zone. I don't really always like to give big zones because I feel like anyone can say, "Oh yeah, guys, we're just gonna come back somewhere in here." Now obviously this zone is even bigger than the last one, but you get the point. I like to just be a little bit more specific, have things a little bit more tight, just because I feel like it does have a little bit more value. But generally speaking, right, even if I was supposed to be a little bit more nitpicky with my price action, I would say these zones down here are probably generally going to be your best sniper zones. They might not pop up every single time, but generally I feel like this would be like the sniper zones, objectively speaking. These zones up here were still great and excellent zones, but these zones down here will probably be your sniper zones. And the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because overall, what I'm trying to say is I believe, generally speaking, kind of from now and even us going down potentially another 30%, 40, not 40%, but let's say 30% or so, this is going to be the main zone that's going to be trying to build up a foundation the same way Zebec was building a foundation over here down in this zone around the 0.0008 areas, right? So, it's just going to be happening on a bigger scale, right? We're going to have more price action. We're going to have more, we're going to have bigger candles, more volume, because we could see, right? We could see some of these weekly candles are really small. You got to remember, this is a week's worth of data, and some of these candles are puny. Okay, I mean, even okay, sure, this candle at the beginning of September was puny, but we actually still had decent price action both ways. Zebec here was a baby, right? Now I would say it's no longer a baby. It's more like a little child or like a teenager. And then in altcoin season, you're gonna see how fast this thing grows all the way to a grown ass adult. I'm not even joking you. This thing is going to look huge. This thing is going to look like, damn, like these candles are ripping, right? These candles are ripping in volume. They are going to be very big visually, and yeah, so Overall, I do expect Zebec to start to bottom out very, very shortly. I expect Zebec to start going sideways very, very shortly. Granted, it is December, right? So things are going to start slowing down. I would say probably the last 2 weeks of December. That's usually when you see the least amount of price action, the most amount of sideways movement. If you are not familiar, obviously, the reason for the slowdown is people go on vacations around Christmas time, New Year's time, and overall, there's just that whole period is just very slow and messy, right? Just very. You could argue maybe the last 10 days of December are more like that than necessarily half December, but generally speaking, the second half of December is always a lot slower, and then we kind of start bouncing back. To be honest, like between the 3rd and the 6th of January, okay, you know, um, and yeah, and that's when I really expect things to start pumping. Last time if we go to something even like Bitcoin, for example, we're gonna use Bitcoin as just one example. Bitcoin back in January and December, right? December it was kind of just doing whatever. Here we can see the last 2 weeks was kind of whatever. Boom, January, the first week was kind of slow, but then early to upwards of mid-January, we got bangers. Boom, then we had specific candles, and then February we really started to push out. When we go and look at previous data as well as maybe in terms of 2023 January and everything, and December, we can see December once again was, it started to bottom out, it started to go sideways, and then again, last time it was the 8th of January, this time is the 9th, we started to move up. So we could see, historically, December is more sideways. It's more prep. It's a preparation for the pumps in early January. And even if I go to 2022, let's see how the price action was there. Right? If we go to 2022 price action, granted, these candles in December are actually pretty big, right? These are actually pretty big candles. But then we can see the start of January is when the big sell-offs really started to happen, while December was mainly a sideways month. It's granted, like I said, it's still pretty decent range for December. It was like a 6K range, and that might not seem like a lot, but for Bitcoin at that time, it was a lot. When we go to another previous year, and this will be the last one I'll do, and we'll go back to Zebec, we can see, right? December was boom, it pumped a little bit, and actually December was really fantastic for 2020. So it doesn't always have to be sideways. Most of the time it is, but I guess there always could be an anomaly event or something could happen. Overall, since we are in Bitcoin, I would like to see Bitcoin to be going up in December, as this does change the outcome for everything, because we are currently looking at the 3-month candle. Just saying right now, if this ends up being a very bad candle this 3-month, then this is most likely the end of Bitcoin. We probably will see short-term reversals to then go down in 2026. But if December continues to go up higher and higher, then there's a great chance that we actually continue to go higher with Bitcoin, and we'll get a bigger and better altcoin season. When we go back to something like our beloved Zebec, right, we can see our charts are very, very weird. They're very, very weird. But the last time, like I said, they start to get weird, we experienced huge pumps not too long after. So overall, I'm super, super optimistic when it comes to Zebec. I do believe, the next pumps are going to be upwards of 0.004 and 0.0048 in terms of the swing zones, as those are the swing areas as of right now. But that is going to be all to me, though, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys did enjoy. I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.